प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्. Good morning. To a very interesting subject. So, the subject, of course, just formally announcing, spiritual psychology of mindfulness. Now, this is a very interesting subject which has become very popular, mostly in the Western countries. It is based on one of Buddha's most famous discourses. Buddha used to preach in Prakrit language. Prakrit was a vernacular, and it is written form was called Pali. So in a way we can say it is a primitive form of Sanskrit, though it had its own grammatical structure. It had variations, in fact. Those of you who are from India may not have heard that most of the modern Indian languages, especially languages from northern part of India, are derived from 4 different shades of this primitive form of Sanskrit. Eastern Prakrit, Western Prakrit, Southern and Northern. Different types of different forms of, let us say, a primitive, they often use the unpleasant word, a corrupted form of Sanskrit. It's not proper, perhaps. Buddha used it, so it should be a very refined language. It was the language that people used to use for their daily conversation. So the Buddha preached in the language of the common people. Now, there are 2-3 important source books for mindfulness. One is in Digha Nikaya, it is called Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So, Maha means great. Sati in Pali means memory, remembering, awareness, and so on. It is again coming from an older form of Sanskrit called Smriti. It is not just remembering or memorization. It actually, as you are going to find out, it means being in a state of awareness. Now, most of us live in this world, we talk, we walk, we do different things without being aware of what we are doing at that moment. Now, suppose you can be fully aware of what thought is arising in your mind. You are driving to San Francisco Vedanta Society, eating your food, even taking a flower in your hands. All these activities can be done with full awareness, completely focusing yourself on that little bit of act. And then what happens, you actually push away from your mind all other thoughts and activities. And mind actually becomes calm and quiet. To give an example, I shall begin this discussion with some very simple graphic examples of how it actually works at the mental level, because spiritual psychology. How do we become aware of what we are thinking? Mind is such a phenomenon that we can never really program our mind. We can program our actions. You can just, let us say, make a list of the activities you are going to engage in this afternoon or tomorrow. You can make a complete list, and more or less you can act and work according to your plan. You can program your physical activities, but you can never really program your mind. You can never be sure absolutely sure what thought is going to arise in our mind next split second. So that shows mind is totally unpredictable. We cannot determine what thought is going to arise in our mind. At the same time, we always become worried about various events happening in our life. Buddhist philosophers tell us something very interesting. Why we become happy and unhappy. A lot of thoughts are flowing through the mind. We take a few fragmented collections of those thoughts and we identify ourselves with those thoughts or those experiences. And if those experiences are not happy, we become unhappy. If those experiences are happy, we become happy. But suppose we can stand aside and not participating in this process of thoughts, but witnessing these thoughts as somebody sitting in a gallery, watching a drama going on. You may weep when the hero dies, but that's only for a short time. It doesn't affect our mind because we are witnessing a drama. But suppose we can witness the entire phenomena of thoughts flowing to the mind, different events taking place in life, and we can look at the whole thing without focusing on one single event or fragments of events, detaching ourselves completely from all this, but still being aware of it. Then what happens, it's just like, let us say, I shall give an example. Suppose you are holding a heavy weight, let's say 200 kilos, somebody puts on your head. If that huge weight touches on our forehead, then we feel pain and we feel the weight. But suppose there is a millimeter gap between the huge bag and our head, it doesn't just touch the head. A millimeter gap. You won't feel the weight. Suppose a lot of events are taking place and we participate in those events, we become happy and unhappy. But suppose we watch these events, like that, if we can watch our own thoughts, if we can watch our own life, if we can be aware of the thoughts going on in our mind, it's called sati. Sati means smriti, awareness. When you become aware of something, you find the problem is solved. Awareness gives you, on the one hand, a feeling of being aware of it. At the same time, a feeling of dissociation. You are away from it. So if we can really watch our own life, our own ideas, our own emotions, as we are watching a drama, it is called vipassana meditation, insightful. So vipassana visheshena darshanam means seeing, witnessing, observing, being aware of in a special manner, visheshena. All these Pali words have their origin in Sanskrit grammar. So you should not mind if I dig a little deeper and take you to the original word. So Buddha preached this great art which he considered to be the impermanence of the world phenomena. Once you understand the reality of an inherent incompleteness, dissatisfaction, which is called dukkha, and when you understand that there is absolutely nothing which is permanent in this phenomenal world, then you can feel a great compassion for everything. You can be aware of everything, including your own life, but you won't be affected by that. So Buddha developed this unique practice of meditation, which later became popular in English languages as mindfulness. So the first important source of these teachings called the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Mahasatipatthana Sutram is more complicated in Sanskrit. Mahasmriti means the great awareness memory. Upasthana means being established in that awareness. And Sutra means a long discourse. Sutta is Pali for sutra. It means like a thread. Sutra means a thread. It can also mean a pity statement, but it means a thread. You know, garlands, they prepare garlands with flowers. They need a thread, so they put together different flowers in that, and that's how we get a garland. So Buddha gave this very important discourse addressing the Buddhist monks. So, Ekonayam Bhikkave Maggo. Magga means marga, path, direct path. One direct path, or monks. So he was addressing, monks means nuns also, you should remember. There were Buddhist nuns and also Buddhist monks. So addressing them, at the beginning of Mahasatipatthana Sutta, you find Buddha tells these monks, this is the one path, Magga, one path that takes you to liberation, and once you become aware of the reality of dukkha, which we are going to discuss, then once you become aware of the path, eightfold path, which we are going to discuss in course of time, the right vision, the right understanding, the right conduct, the right livelihood, the right way of speaking, the right concentration, samadhi. So you are going to discuss this one after another. Samyak Smriti is one of those eightfold disciplines. From that Samyak Smriti, you can get this idea of mindfulness. So, the first important source book, as I mentioned, is Mahasatipatthana Sutta. It is found in Digha Nikaya. So, Pali canonical literature, which is actually more authentic and more important for the Hinayana school of Buddhists and not Mahayana school of Buddhists. Hinayana Buddhism was mostly practiced in countries like Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, where Buddhist monks used to memorize this Pali canonical literature. The Mahayana system developed a number of important philosophical schools, like the Shunyavada, Vijnanavada, the subjective idealism is come from Mahayana school. Sautrantika and Vaibhashika, these two schools come from Hinayana, or the traditional, the Pali canonical school. So the second source book is for Majjhima Nikaya, which has actually become more popular because it is shorter in number. So Buddha wanted to give a long discourse when he addressed spiritual seekers who were just still progressing and evolving. So addressing them, he gave a long discourse. He called Mahasatipatthana Sutta. The other one is Mahasatipatthana Sutta in Pali, simplified Pali. The other one is Satipatthana Sutta. That is, Maha is left out. It is shorter in size, so it is found in the Majjhima Nikaya. So different 2-3 important versions of Satipatthana Sutta are normally followed in Buddhist tradition. Now I shall give just an outline of the philosophical and psychological aspects of Buddhism in general. The first thing we should remember is Buddhism believes in 3 important principles, which Pali is called anicca, anatta, and dukkha. So these are 3 fundamental principles followed by Buddhists in general. The first and most important principle is anicca, anitya in Sanskrit, impermanence. So there is nothing in this world which can be called permanent. Now, Buddha was referring to the phenomenal world, remember. That's you should remember, To explain this, I shall quote one verse from an important Sanskrit book, which is considered to be the Bible of Shunyavada Buddhism. Shunyavada is the most prominent school which is propagated by many of the great Buddhist teachers who came from China, Japan, Tibet, and all these countries, especially those who came to America. The great void you find in the English translations of these books is called the great emptiness or the great void. That is one of the idealistic schools of Buddhism. And the Bible, the most fundamental text of that work is called Madhyamika Kariga or Mula Madhyama Shastra. Those of you who want more information, you can record later. You can even ask questions also later. We have an interesting, exciting question and answer session. So in that book, Nagarjuna makes a very interesting statement, which is the key to understanding mindfulness, or especially the principle of impermanence. What Buddha actually meant by the statement that there is nothing in this world which is permanent. And there is nothing which can be called Atman. Anatta means the principle, the philosophy of non-Atman. The statement by Nagarjuna is Dve satye samupasitya buddhanam desha sevana loka samvrdi satyamcha paramarthataha. This is the key to understanding the theology and metaphysics of Shunyavada Buddhism. In a way, the whole range of Buddhist psychology and Buddhist philosophy. The followers of Buddha preach and teach two fundamental principles. That's a transition. Or the teachings are based on two fundamental principles. One is Loka Samvrdi Satyamcha Paramarthataha. There are two types of realities in the world. The one is Loka Samvrdi means the phenomenal reality, the changing reality. That which comes and goes. Everything comes and goes. Our thoughts, ideas, the whole earth, the whole universe. A few billions of years, the universe may live. Our thoughts may live for a few split seconds. A healthy person may live for 100 years. All these belong to the impermanent phenomenal existence. That is called Loka Samvrti. And Buddha said that, so there is nothing which is permanent in this world. Everything is impermanent. So the principle of impermanence. As I mentioned in the beginning, in mindfulness, what do? You become aware of every thought, every idea, every action that you are doing, that you are witnessing, that's going on around us. When you become aware of every event, everything that happens in every microsecond, every micro moment, as a witness, not as a participant, then you can smile watching the drama of your own life. So you may have heard of Buddhist breathing exercise. It's a very important exercise. One of the four foundations of mindfulness is, the Buddhists call it Kaya, Vedana, Chitta, Dhamma. Dhamma. It's called Dhamma in Pali. Now, and in that practice, especially in mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of different sensations and contents of Dhamma, mind itself. So being in body, you become aware, you become mindful of the body. Being in mind, you become aware of the mind. So in this discipline, the first discipline that they teach, mostly in Sri Lanka and other Sri Lankan school of Buddhism, Burmese school of Buddhism, and also in Thailand and many of these Far Eastern countries, is breathing. So they teach you breathing in and breathing out, more like yogasana, pranayama, etc. Now when you breathe in with full awareness, your whole mind is concentrated on this involuntary act of breathing. At that moment, you are not aware of anything. Your mind is completely freed from all associations, all disturbances, all sorrows, all complexities, all worries, all anxieties, all the problems that normally torment our mind. So when you completely observe your own breath and breathe with full concentration, then what happens is all other vrittis, vasanas, samskaras, all impulses, ideas, emotions, worries are completely removed, and you focus on this particular involuntary act of breathing in and breathing out. That's why we feel our mind is being emptied, so people feel relaxation. Otherwise, mind will be worried about so many things. All the problems of everyday existence will be torturing the mind. When you watch the breath, everything is gone. So what happens, as I mentioned earlier, when we normally live in the world, we take certain events, certain phenomena, certain things, certain elements of the phenomena in fragmented chunks, and we identify with them, we focus on them, and we become worried and anxious. When we are totally detached from them, or when we take the whole thing as one changing, continuous flow of impermanent sensations, without being attached with that, but watching them, being aware of it, then mind is totally free from all worries and anxieties. That's why we feel great joy, as if somebody has taken a huge weight off our head or shoulders. We feel relaxed. So that is the impermanence. The second important principle of Buddhism is the principle of dukkha. So, Chattvari Arya Satyani, four noble truths. That's the original teachings of Buddha. Dukkha Satcha means. There is an element of dissatisfaction, incompleteness, which is grief or essential non-completeness, if imperfection, with everything in this world, because it is impermanent. This is the second principle. The third principle is anatta. Anatta is Pali for anatma. Buddha did not, as many people unfortunately preach, Buddha did not believe in any kind of nihilism. What Buddha said was, in this loka samvrti, in this phenomenal existence, there is nothing which can be called absolutely real. That is anattavada. So all these principles are to be understood in the context of the phenomenal world. As for the question, is there something transcendental, eternal, immortal, Buddha's answer was one long silence, not absolute denial, but total silence. You cannot say silence means a strong no, any more than silence means a strong yes. Buddha kept quiet. So this is an important point to remember. First, Nagarjuna's very clear famous statement, Dve satye samupasitya buddhanam desha sevana loka samvriddhi satyam cha paramarthadaka. The whole range of Buddhist preachers, what they preach can be reduced to this central principle. There are two realities. One is the changing, the phenomenal, the momentary, sensations and events happening in our life. The second one is something absolutely real, paramartha satya, means shunya according to Nagarjuna. So this is an important point, remember. Now the second point, remember, is Buddha preached meditation. Now he had a very interesting, Buddha himself explains this Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Meditation has got certain definite purposes. Total 5 purposes are stated by Buddha for meditation. One is meditation. The first important purpose of meditation is purification of mind. The second purpose is to overcome, to get rid of incompleteness, sorrow, grief, and to understand dukkha, and then to strive for nirvana, which is called Eightfold Path. So, and to overcome all these sensations and worries that torture our life. So the first teaching is purification of mind. That's which is called chitta. It's also one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So what is our mind? So you have to remember, many of us may know already that Buddhism and Patanjali Yoga Sutra are very closely related. Not only that, some of the greatest yoga commentators were Buddhists. So Buddhism has taken a lot of great ideas related to spiritual psychology from Yoga Sutras. Now in Yoga Sutra you find the entire mental world is divided into 2 categories, analyzed from 2 standpoints. One is our experiences. Second, our reaction to our experiences. This is very simple. So Buddha's Eightfold Path is nothing but a tool to help us to take this ascent from where we stand to the level of nirvana, liberation. So when you practice proper righteous livelihood with the right attitude, the right context, and you discipline your words, it's called right speech, because some make vak, some make drishti, some make ajiva, some make karma, and so on. Some make smriti. So when you practice these disciplines, what happens, our mind takes an ascent, and gradually our mind gets refined. Otherwise, our reactions to our own experiences can be a problem in our life. If we try to meditate, for example, suppose any of us, those who are trying to meditate for the first time in our life, when we try to meditate, it is a big torture for the beginners. But mindfulness tells you that it is the easiest natural state of our mind. That is what mindfulness teaches us. That Buddha taught. See, mindfulness is not something that you learn it is not a skill, it is not a knowledge, it is coming back to our own natural state. At the highest level, you sit, you talk, you eat your food, you drive your car, you work in the factory, and you are practicing mindfulness. That is the highest state of mindfulness. It's not like sitting with a big bravado, sitting upright and meditating. Then I'm in a state of mindfulness. Otherwise, no, it's not that. Mindfulness is a natural state. Prasannatmendriya manaka swasthaitya vidhiyate. Based on this principle, the ancient Ayurvedic philosophers like Sushruta and others, they have taught that the real natural state of human mind is being established in a state of perfect equilibrium, which is what actually meant by mindfulness in Buddhism. You have to remember, many of the great Ayurvedic writers, they were all Buddhists. So Buddhists have made great contribution to yoga, Ayurveda and Sanskrit grammar. Tupavatara, the book that is supposed to be memorized by beginners in Sanskrit, traditional Sanskrit schools, written by Buddhists. So anyway, that's a different subject. Now coming back to the subject. So when you practice mindfulness, you're coming back to your own home. That's your real state. So confusions, or perplexities and problems and anxieties, these are all actually alien to our natural state of mind. It's not our natural state of mind. So when you practice mindfulness, you practice a kind of unfocused, uninterrupted awareness of everything, but with a sense of detachment. Now, coming to another interesting subject which I wanted to focus on is this. How do we connect with our real state of mind in our everyday life? The first principle that Buddha preaches is this purification of mind. That is one of the purposes of meditation. Now, normally our mind doesn't cooperate. Well, how to make our mind cooperate with our intention to meditate? Now, why the mind doesn't cooperate? Buddhists and yoga psychologists agree on one point, that is previous life. And also the link between action, its results, and their impact in our character. It's called the doctrine of reincarnation and the law of karma. Both are understood and recognized by yoga philosophers, Buddhists, and more traditional Hinduism. Most of Indian religious traditions agree with this point. So for that we should know our mind. As I mentioned earlier, mind can be analyzed from two angles. One, our experiences and our reaction to our experiences. Mind reacts in two different ways towards experiences. One positive, the other negative, in a broad category. But yoga philosophers and Buddhists go beyond that. So avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, the Buddhists call it klesha, which are recognized by Buddhists. First of all, we have a natural tendency to react negatively towards an unpleasant experience, unhappy experience, either happening in our own mind or coming from outside. Then we have a natural inherent tendency to react favorably towards a happy or pleasant experience within our own mind or coming from outside. Then we have a tendency to avoid certain experiences or to fight certain experiences. Abhinivesha corresponds to our tendency to avoid. Dvesha corresponds to our tendency to fight against unpleasant experiences. Now, how the mind gets filled up with these experiences? In fact, the Buddhist philosophers Buddha's historians give justification why Buddha gave more than 2 discourses on Mahasatipatthana. Buddha himself admitted that all spiritual seekers don't belong to the same category. There are those who are more highly evolved. For them, just one preaching is enough. So some of the shorter versions of Satipatthana Sutta were preached to those who were more highly evolved, and the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which is much bigger, the Digha Nikaya, was meant for people who were not so highly evolved. So now the subject point is, how does our mind get accumulated, get filled up with these tendencies? We sometimes turn our own mind into our own worst enemy, and sometimes our own mind becomes our best friend. When mind is not our best friend, mind doesn't cooperate with any noble action or thought that we want to engage in. When mind becomes our enemy, then it declares a war upon us whenever we try to do something good, meditation, whatever it is. So the natural inherent tendency in our mind prompts us to do certain things, to think certain things, to act in certain ways and speak certain words. So how do we analyze this? So for that, yoga philosophers, especially Vajaspati and many of the Vedic commentators, this Yoga Sutra commentators who are Buddhist, they have tried to evolve this unique theory based on Vyasa's Bhasha. It's called Karma Vritti Samskara Vasana Sankalpa Chakram. In Buddhist tradition, those who have studied Buddhist philosophy, you may have heard of Paditi Samutpada, 12 link, all based on Trishna, desire, our clinging to life, our desire, our hatred, our greed, our lust, which are all included among the contents of Dhamma in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So you find that our mind is filled with certain tendencies and impressions which are not helping us to meditate or practice mindfulness. So Buddha prays purification of the mind is the first purpose of meditation. But it cannot be forced. So we have to get our mind ready. How do we get our mind ready? Or how do we help our own mind to become more agreeable to meditative practices? By changing the contents of the mind, by changing the components of the mind, by changing what the mind consists of. Mind consists of impressions, attitudes, behavior patterns, emotions, feelings, and so on, which are all related to some actions we have done in the past. When we do any act, physical, not only physical activity, even a thought, a word, an idea that crosses our mind, immediately that becomes a residual factor. It is added to the mental system. It is called vritti. You get any action we do, any thought that comes to our mind, any word we speak, all these will produce some residual effect. There's an invisible leftover that actually added to the mental system. Some of them are not good, some of them are goods. When these vasanas, samskaras, impressions are not very good, then when we try to meditate, mind will not help us. That's why Buddha preached purification is the first important requisite for being established in mindfulness. So we will have, please remember, we will have 15 minutes of this lecture and then we will have interaction. If you feel that many of these ideas need more clarification during interaction, I'd be happy to try to do that. So every action we produce, we do, becomes a vritti. What is vritti? Vritti is an involuntary tendency. To give an example, suppose you are sitting in a room surrounded by books. There are some wonderful books. Gita, Bible, Upanishads, or different holy scriptures of different religious traditions, or any great book which is ennobling, which is elevating. And there are also some books which are not so very desirable, which you won't permit your own children to read. Now, suppose we don't know, nobody knows, nobody is going to know what books we are going to read. What are we going to choose? What book are we going to choose? When we know, nobody is going to know, noticing us. So that involuntary action will reveal what is our samskara in our mind. And these samskaras are related to some previous actions. So actions become vrittis, vrittis become tendencies called samskaras, and they're all stored up in the mental system. And then we act accordingly. Either we repeat some actions which we found to be pleasant, or we avoid certain actions which we don't like, which become unpleasant. So through engaging in physical activities which are good, which are noble, which are good for us and which are good for others, we can generate new tendencies, new impressions. That's why Buddhist monks in the Abhidhamma contains a lot of ideas regarding the discipline of Buddhist monks. So Buddha was a very stern disciplinarian. So you find 253 according to some school, 273 according to some other school, vows are imposed upon Buddhist monastics traditionally, more or less. So they had to go about begging the food from others. They were not allowed to accumulate. In ancient times, I'm not talking about our times, of course. So the point is, they were expected to practice these strong disciplines. And this effort, these vows, will generate spiritual samskaras, spiritual tendencies. So if you go on doing some good noble deed for a long time, you find it easy to meditate. If a person does something, if he engages himself or herself in some noble activity without any selfish purpose, naturally he will, you need not go to a church or a temple or any place of worship or anything. If a person can go on doing good actions without any selfish purpose, noble actions for the good of others, the physical efforts will generate spiritual energy, which will transform the structure of human mind, and mind begins to cooperate in meditation. That's why Buddha first preached this purification of the mind as one of the most important purposes of meditation. The second important purpose of meditation is overcoming sorrow. Buddhist concept of dukkha, Buddhist concept of sorrow, kind of impermanence, they are interrelated in explaining Buddha's emphasis on compassion actually. So compassion or empathy, good feeling towards others, the feeling that we share other people's sorrows, all these will purify our mind. So there is a difference between physical activity and mental activity. At the mental level, you may not be able to help a person, but you have a tendency to help a person. You suppose you don't have money, but you sincerely feel sympathy or compassion, let's say for people suffering from epidemic diseases or earthquakes. You are not able to send a huge amount, you are not able to send a check, but you feel sincerely worried. In fact, that itself, that compassion, that itself will have purifying effect on the mind. At the physical level, you have to give something to somebody, then only it will be helpful. But at the mental level, for mental purification, sincere feeling, sincere sensations are enough to turn the mind into a friend when you try to meditate. So that is why dukkha, overcoming sorrow, all these are interrelated in understanding Buddhist concept of compassion. And then another very important, of course, purpose of meditation to understand dukkha. Dukkha is translated into grief. Grief, as we understand according to Webster's or Oxford Dictionary, that's not exactly what Buddha meant by the word dukkha. Dukkha implies a feeling of incompleteness, which is the root of any higher aspiration for any noble human beings. A feeling of dissatisfaction with the phenomenal world, which is full of impermanent experiences which come and go like a flow. So that feeling of dissatisfaction and the consequent aspiration for something higher is what is implied by the word dukkha in Buddhist tradition. You can understand this when you read Buddha's life. Buddha was born as a prince, lived in luxury. He was 28 years old. One day he was being taken out on a chariot around the streets of Lumbini, the small town where his palace was located, and he had 4 visions. He saw a dead body being taken to the cremation ground. He saw an old man. He saw a sick man. So old age, sickness, and death. 3 terrible realities of life, which he was not allowed to experience before that moment. And then he saw the face of the serene face of a sage, who perhaps was living in a state of mindfulness, because there was so much of detachment, serenity, and peace. That's what really happens in our life. We can practice this every day. Impermanence is not something that we are not aware of. The problem is, you ask any doctor who may have done a lot of operations, who may cause the death of many patients. Go to crematorium, somebody who pushes the body every day to a tube. He doesn't become an Aristotle all of a sudden. He knows that death is real. So he doesn't believe the body is eternal. He doesn't believe the body is permanent. It's not difficult for him to believe in the impermanence of human body and everything. But human body, if human body is impermanent, then everything that human body experiences is impermanent for that person to whom the body belongs. But he doesn't become a Buddha. So it's not that we are not intellectually aware of this, but this awareness doesn't remain for long. And mindfulness helps you to remain in this state of awareness. What we already know to be the obvious fact, the obvious truth, remember that. That's what mindfulness, that's what Buddha actually told his disciples. Bhikkhave maggo means this is the path to you, for you, O monks. He addressed the Buddhist monks in Rajagriha, the capital of Magadha Empire at that time. There's Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So what we know to be the obvious fact, that we should be aware of all the time. So that's why the meditative, contemplative quality has to be brought into actual practice, into real action every microsecond in our life. So that's why I said earlier, mindfulness is not something that you learn. It is something that we actually reach up to, discover to be the real fact, real state of our own mind. So Buddha was not worried about death of a person. Buddha was worried about the whole problem of the basic impermanence and incompleteness that he saw, that he was fully convinced of when he saw the dead body being taken to the cremation ground, the sick man and the old man. Old age, it tells you, well, body is not permanent. But people believe body is permanent. That's why, we reverse the metabolism of whitening the teeth and blackening the hair. It doesn't work, really speak, for too long. So the point is, mindfulness actually wants us, it tells us, it teaches us to be aware of what we already know, That's what it is. So Buddha actually walked 1200 miles and reached Buddhigaya and sat under a tree, and this Buddha Vijaya, the famous book by Sugosha, says, Ikasane sushudu me shariram dagustimamsam chevilayam chiyathu aprapya siddhim bhujanma durlabham naivasanat kayamatas chalishyate. He himself sat under a Bodhi tree in Bodhgaya. And he said, I am sitting here, let my body perish, let it be reduced to bonds and flesh. I won't get up from this seat before I realize the ultimate reality, truth. And he realized the impermanence and also consequent dissatisfaction, dukkha, and therefore the fact that there is nothing that can be called permanent as a permanent reality in this phenomenal world. So when you realize this, you understand Sattvari Arya Satyani, the truth of dukkha. Then the next discipline, it is called Eightfold Path. That Eightfold Path is the royal highway to Nirvana according to Buddhism. We will discuss that in the coming lecture. And then Buddha talks about Nirvana, and so far as Buddhist teachings go, according to Mahasatipatthana Sutta, this mindfulness, remaining in the state of eternal awareness, is the royal path to Nirvana. So we'll discuss this later, maybe in the afternoon session. Now you're open, it's an open session. Questions are most welcome from the floor. Thank you.
Yeah. Sir, you said about vritti.
Yeah.
Say Patanjali said vritti, good and bad.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
How
yeah.
relate with chitta?
Yeah.
As
yeah.
said in Buddhism.
Yeah. Could you repeat the question? Maybe others can hear.
Yes. Respected sir.
You repeat the question because then I answer.
I will do that. You refer in between Patanjali Yoga Sutras that Sage Patanjali has written, and this recent topic what we are talking about Buddhism, Eightfold Path and Four Noble Truths. So Rutti, Sage Patanjali in fourth aphorism of his Samadhi path he has said.
Brief. No, I understand your question.
Yeah.
So I will answer now. Just
okay.
So
Rutti is good and bad. Yeah. So how Chitta in Buddhism relate with this good or bad phases of Vritti?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Yeah, very good question. Now, Patanjali says, Vrittaya Panchataya Klishtaha Aklishtaha. Now, Vrittis are Pramana Vipare Vigalpa Nidra Smrtayaha Vrittayaha. Means, now, first of all, I should tell you what Vritti is. Vritti is translated into plain English, into the word wave. Now, that translation is based on one very interesting analogy. When you throw a stone into an ocean or a pond, when the stone hits the surface of the lake, it will have an impact. The water will flow for some time, and again it comes back again. Like that, whatever we do, not only physical action, mental action, a thought, a word we speak, an idea that just flashes across in our mind, all these can leave a residual effect even after that action is over. You give, let us say, you help a person to cross the street, a blind person, let us hope, and well, that person is helped, he gets help. That is one obvious result. You give money to somebody, a needy person, he gets help, obvious. But something else happens to you. that noble action will leave a residual effect, invisible residual effect on your mental system. It is called the invisible, unseen impact of a good noble deed. It is called adrishtam in Sanskrit. Apurvam means it did not exist before you did that noble deed. It's a natural accompanying impact, result of any good or bad action you do. It is called vritti. These vrittis get accumulated in the mental system and they constitute our character. Buddha devised the unique path of eightfold Ashtanga, eightfold path. All these paths called sammik, proper, righteous, the right. So the right action, the right word, the right memory, right livelihood, right way of thinking, right memory, right concentration. So everything should be appropriate. The word sammik is samyak drishti, samyak ajiva, etc. How does it become sammyak? You do all these with the full awareness of their impermanence. Because if you do anything without this awareness, then we may do it with desire, trishna, which becomes a binding factor. Buddha says trishna is the central, the core of our continuing cyclic rotation, coming and going. We call it praditya samutpada. Being born, enjoying and suffering, dying and again reborn, going on through this cycle which should come to an end, and the only way to bring it to an end is to attain nirvana. So once you practice these 8 disciplines, what happens? Chitta gets accumulated with good vrittis first, and gradually you transcend even those vrittis. First, we must produce good vrittis, good samskaras. Once good samskaras become dominant, then chitta actually becomes free from all this, along with the trishna, desire, to the clinging to life also disappears, and then the cyclic rotation of birth, life, death and rebirth is gone. You attain nirvana. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned that in Buddhism there are 2 realities, and you mentioned the impermanent reality, phenomenal. What's the other reality?
The other reality called shunya. Shunya. So shunya is the word. Of course, please remember the word shunya is a technical term coined by Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna is perhaps the greatest dialectician and philosopher in Buddhist tradition. His fundamental book is called Mula Madhyama Shastra or Madhyamika Kariga, which has got English translations and with commentaries by Chandragirti. So he says the absolute reality is something which is non-dual, which is indescribable, which is transcendental, which cannot be described or defined. That's our true nature. Yeah. Okay. In fact, when Buddha uses these 3 terms, I mean the Pali literature, not Sanskrit, anicca, anatta, and dukkha. Buddha Pali theologians are referring to the phenomenal empirical existence. Loka samvriti means what Vedanta is called vyavaharika satta, Advaita called vyavaharika satta. Same thing. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. The way many of us understand Buddhism is that the power is within us to make all these changes. How do you reconcile that with the experience of a spiritual epiphany in which you, like I've experienced, a power greater than myself. Do we have all that power, or is the power outside? Or is it both?
We are not aware of that power because we identify ourselves with all these momentary, fragmented sensations and experiences, and we identify with them without realizing their impermanence. This is the answer from Buddhism. So once you understand their essential impermanence, then you see the whole entire phenomenal world and our own life as one continuous flow of impermanent sensations. Once you understand that impermanence, then you actually are detached from it. See, we get attached to things when we identify ourselves with something as very important, as in a way permanent, which is very, 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 very special. Once we recognize their essential impermanence, then we are not shocked. So that experience, the ability to detach ourselves and to witness everything as a witness, that helps us to identify with our own true self. That is far beyond these impermanent things. So long as we are identified with these impermanent things, then we completely forget our true dimension. Every moment we become happy, we become unhappy, we become worried, and we go through every experiences. Every moment we lose our own identity when we identify ourselves as the experiencer of these phenomenal experiences. Once we dissociate ourselves or non-identify ourselves, then we actually come back home to our own true nature. So that state is called mindfulness. So once you remain in that, when you are able to retain that awareness, sati, it's called sati, means awareness. So sati, memory. Here what it means is not just memory as we understand in the ordinary word. In a state of perpetual awareness of the impermanence and the essential impermanence and the essential dissatisfactory structure. Once that happens, we actually identify ourselves with something transcendental. So long as you identify yourself with that, you are that. So long as you identify with something else, you are something else. But once we look upon the whole thing as one continuous, changing, impermanent phenomena, then we transcend that association, the identification. Is that clear? Thank you. Yeah.
How do we let go of those associations without hurting someone? I mean, in the samsara world, you tend to affect someone because you are aware of everything you want to associate, but in the process you might affect someone.
So that's why Buddhist, one of the important foundations of mindfulness is you should be able to meditate in body on body. So when you understand the impermanent nature of body, like that, when you try to meditate on mind, being on mind, what happens? We can reduce our normal natural tendency to do harm to somebody, to practice selfishness, or to do something that could be harmful to our own spiritual life. So the tendency to do something harmful is always because of our non-awareness of the impermanence of the phenomenal things. Yeah. Anything?
Oh, yes. This Kind of reminds me of something I read in the Rig Veda, where it said, when purified by rays of intelligent discrimination, the thoughts and the mind humbly submit to wisdom.
Could you slow down a little?
I'm sorry, my apologies.
Yeah.
One of the lines of the Rig Veda is, when purified through rays of intelligent discrimination, the thoughts and the mind humbly submit to wisdom.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite line that I read, actually. It reminds me of what you're saying, the Viveka, I suggest, is a lot of what the Buddha talks about. But my biggest problem, I guess, I'm struggling with is vairagya. How do I have detachment of that impermanence?
Yeah. There are these 7 disciplines which are recommended in Vedantic tradition. The first of the first 4 of those disciplines are called sadhana chatushtayam. The 5th, 6th and 7th is called Sravana, Marana, Nididhyasana. I should try to come to that. The first one is actually what Buddhists are talking about. Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. Discerning wisdom to understand what is real and then follow that reality, and the ability to understand what is unreal and to slowly get rid of our attachment to that and those unreal things. So this come one after another. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, Ihamutra Phala Bhoga Viraga, Samadhi Sarka Sambatti, Mumukshutva. 4 disciplines. In short, I will tell you what it is. Once you really understand the impermanence of the unreal, see, once you really understand, once you become aware of it, it won't affect you. People who are intellectually aware of many of these things are not benefited by spiritual wisdom. The reason is they are not able to remain in a state of awareness of what they actually understand. See, any person, as I mentioned, a person working in crematorium or somebody who runs a crematorium, he is not willing to really accept the fact that this body will not be there all the time. He understands intellectually, but that intellectual awareness, it doesn't reach the mental level. It doesn't reach the attitude level, the emotional level. That's why when his own near and dear old person died, he worried. He gets so much worried. So every day he is witnessing the same incident. A doctor who may have seen this thing happening so many times in a hospital, he's shocked when his own 900 years old relative passes away. So there is no absence of intellectual awareness, but intellectual awareness doesn't always help, because there is a wide gap between mind and intellect. So mindfulness helps you to bring that intellectual awareness right to every microsecond, micro moment of your life. So it becomes a real philosophy of life. That's why once you get established in that, then it is not something that you learn. It is an obvious fact which everyone should understand. Only we forget it. So constant understanding and meditation can help us, really. Continuous meditation will help us to understand the essential impermanence of all these things that we normally consider to be permanent, though intellectually we know that they are impermanent. See, everyone knows that money comes and goes. Money is not supposed to remain for all time. Everyone understands. Even a kindergarten child understands. The richest and best educated financial expert will collapse if he loses $1 million when the stocks fall, How does it happen? He is not intellectually unaware of it. But intellectual awareness has not reached mindfulness. When you are aware of it and we are established in that awareness, it is called Satipatthana, means it is called mindfulness. So mindfulness actually helps us to make use of what we all know, or to convert all our understanding into an ideal of spiritual common sense. Mindfulness is nothing but the art of remaining in a state of spiritual common sense. That's what it is.
Swamiji, thank you for your talk. I want to talk about karma yoga, and I have a very simple example. We tend to donate a lot of things. We accumulate things in our garages and we donate. And that sometimes, even with good intentions, instead of throwing it away, we say, well, we don't need these things, so we're going to give it to somebody else who does need it. I struggle with this because I think that's selfishness, because it's cleaning up my garage, and at the same time, it's helping somebody else. In the realm of karma yoga, is that kind of negating, or is it? Where is my karmic? Where does it go in my karmic bank, so to speak? Thank you.
Giving something to somebody which that person will have to take to task again, that is not an act of charity, you know. So we should give something to somebody if that person needs it. And if a person resolutely denies or refuses to accept your old car, you still dump it on him, then I have helped somebody. It's not help. So that's not the way. The best thing you can do to help that person is not to offer that to him, to that person. So really speaking, that doesn't help. It's not physical action that we are talking about. It's not physical action that we are talking about. Something that we give over to somebody which that person needs, that person will be happy to receive and in need of it, desperately need of it, could make a difference in his life, and then we give it to him. That's what it is about. So karma yoga is a very humanistic concept. It should be helpful to somebody. Otherwise, if you just define it on the base of the particular word, it doesn't make any sense. It should be helpful to someone. That's right. Yeah.
Swamiji, you said mindfulness is the true nature of the mind. Then why is it so difficult for the mind to be mindful?
Mindfulness in its most evolved, established state I'm talking about. Before you reach that state, you have to practice meditation, you have to practice, as I mentioned, noble, especially these eightfold disciplines. So Buddhist philosophers state that these eightfold disciplines are disciplines for the beginners, those who are aspirants. They become second nature to those who are already established in that. So the right word, the right speech, the right livelihood, the right contact, the right smriti, all these become natural to a tathata, somebody who had reached that state, who had reached nirvana. But these are disciplines to be practiced by the seeker, by the aspirant. So to begin with, that's why purification of the mind is the first purpose of meditation. So once you meditate and once you recognize the reality of the impermanence of everything, and once you are able to retain that memory is not a real word, it's awareness of the essential impermanence of things, that will give you an ascent in your own mental structure. You will start looking upon your life and everything from a different perspective. And this compassion, all these qualities become natural to people who are already established in a state of awareness. So there are certain disciplines which become second nature to those who are already highly evolved. For a Buddha, Samyak Smriti, Samyak Arji, all these are his essential characteristics. For a spiritual seeker who is trying to get enlightenment, it is a set of disciplines that slowly one should evolve practice. That's why the first purpose, you should look upon the body, understand the body, meditate on the body, mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings. Understand the feelings, emotions, mindfulness of mind, how the mind functions. So once you become mindful of that, then mind takes an ascent. I give the example of breathing, which is with the Buddhists recommend as one of the fundamental disciplines, When you concentrate and completely focus and become aware of breathing in, which is pranayama also. In fact, in the Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga, there's yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So, mindfulness can be compared to, in its most evolved state, can be roughly correspond to samadhi. Patanjali system. I'm just giving a rough equivalent, not exactly. But pranayama, it helps you to practice pratyahara. Pratyahara means detaching, withdrawing yourself from all these events. Your senses are open, your eyes are open, but eyes don't get over-focused on the momentary visual things. Your ears are open, but your ears do not get over-focused on the audio phenomena. You are able to see them, experience them without forgetting their essential impermanence. So with full awareness, you watch the whole thing as one changing, continuous flow. So you are not caught, you are not trapped, you are free. And that actually helps you conserve energy. A lot of energy is thrown away, wasted unnecessarily. To give an example, I gave this example on another occasion. Suppose you're driving from, let's say, San Jose, maybe Sunnyvale to San Francisco, and you get caught in a traffic, and you're sitting in the car. You know that you cannot move backward or forward. Still, you worry. Actually, your worry is a waste of energy and time. If you are a BP patient, your BP level goes up. All this happened. But actually, that worry will not happen if you are in a state of mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't make you lethargic. Sloth is one of the hindrances of the Dhamma. Discussion becomes sloth, lethargy, laziness, greed, lust, sloth. All these are considered to be hindrances, which are the contents of Dhamma, which should be got rid of through meditation. You are active, you are responsible, you do your duty, but you are not caught and you are not trapped. So in a way, mindfulness in its highest experience, it roughly corresponds to Siddha Prajna in the Gita, from Gita 2nd chapter, from 55th to 72nd verse. In 18 verses, Lord Krishna gives a list of the characteristics of a spiritually evolved person, which Buddha repeats again in Dhammapada in the 26th Varga, Brahmana Varga. Brahmana means highly evolved wise person. That is the topic of discussion in Dhammapada 26th Varga chapter. Okay.
Swamiji?
Hello. Hi. Thank you for your talk. I have a question. So when I'm practicing mindfulness and I'm dedicating my time to doing that, then I find that I can focus on breathing and focus on awareness, and in that dedicated period of time.
Could you just again slow down if you don't mind? Yeah.
Sure. So when I'm practicing mindfulness, and in that dedicated period of time, I feel like I am able to, be more aware and focus on, the breath and be aware. But I find that in other parts of the day, when, say, I'm walking on the street or I'm washing the dishes or doing other things, then I'm constantly trying to solve some problem in my head or plan for something I have to do the next day, and I find it difficult to translate that awareness into my day-to-day activities. I just find it difficult to kind of fit everything in, because I know I have to do that planning, I know I have to solve those problems, but I also want to be aware and be conscious at the same time. So I'd love to hear how I can reconcile those two things.
Yeah, you mean this problem of depression, you mentioned some difficulties?
No, I'm...
A continuing thought. Please excuse me. I shall come to the answer. Certainly I will come. But please tell me. But continuing thought.
She says when she go out after a meditation, she gets all thoughts again.
Oh, yeah, that's natural. That happens to everyone. So, if you don't practice for too long, and if you also supplement your meditative practice with some reading and attending the sessions, so that you'll be enriching your mental system with more such ideas, then these thoughts will get less, they become less unfriendly. They become more friendly. Very often, there could be a conflict between where we are mentally when we meditate and where we are when we stop meditation. Often we consider meditation as something totally different from everyday duties and responsibilities. So what we can do is the state of awareness can be retained in the mental system by associating with these ideas, by reading, by discussion, and by trying to remember. Of course, there is one interesting way to do that. Remember the impermanence of everything. That's including the thoughts that are coming to your mind. So, even the disturbing thoughts can be welcomed. Okay, come, but I know you are not going to be there for long. So, once you remember the essential impermanence of all thought currents, good thoughts and bad thoughts together, then slowly we'll be able to remain, you have to practice a kind of detachment. A problem of too much worry is always rooted in our forgetfulness of the impermanence of all those things. Forgetfulness is the greatest enemy in this respect. This is something we all know. But our knowledge doesn't help unless that knowledge is brought into action into our everyday life. So when this awareness is used as a tool to deal with our everyday problems, it is called spiritual common sense. So you can continue associating with these great ideas that you are aware of in meditation, even after meditation. So mentally we should try to live in a world of these great ideas, so that the conflicting ideas will be reduced gradually, and eventually mind becomes our friend. Yeah.
I have a question, but I'm also noticing that time would be better for me to save the question till later.
You can ask, I think. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. So it's only 10:30. So please, you can ask the question later. Afternoon session.
Ask it.
Afternoon session. We have afternoon session. We will have another session at yes. From 2 to 3:30, we'll have another discussion. We'll have discussion. You please ask the question at that time, please. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Now